out there is fall. It's coming. I know it doesn't look like fall because we stay green mostly through the winter, but it's fall. I don't want to go out there, but really, I don't really mind it because it means that I can start wearing my warm flannel jackets for outside. I'm excited about that. But as the weather gets cooler, out comes the sourdough bread baking for me. Woo! Yay! So what's going on today, Maureen? Number one, I don't eat a lot of bread, but I love making sourdough bread. And also number two, in the summertime, it's just too hot to bake 8 to 10 loaves of bread. So once the fall comes, now starts the bread baking. But also, if you remember from one of my previous videos, I was given a wood fire pizza oven. And so now I can actually bake double the bread in way less time. So I will be firing up the pizza oven. But for this month, there is a collaboration happening called Sourdough September 2023. And this is put on by two fabulous sisters, Marty from Love the Land Every Day and Cindy from Cindy Squirrel Off Grid. And so they put out a challenge for us to bake sourdough bread. Now, because I'm not baking bread all the time, my sourdough starter is not left out here on the counter where I have to feed it every day. Mine's in the refrigerator. So that's the first thing that I'm going to have to do. Bring out my dormant sourdough starter and revive it and then get baking with it. Why, yes, I have a very cluttery refrigerator, but these are all places that we have traveled. So I love to see it to remind myself of where I have been in the world. Let's go see that starter. On second thought, I don't know if I want you to see in my fridge and how messy and cluttery it is. It's about the same as what's going on in here. Don't judge me. We do have some pickles in here, some pickled garlic. This is homemade crema because we love Mexican food, but just in behind there is my sourdough starter. Hello, beautiful. I actually have a second one in my refrigerator because when I get doing a lot of sourdough, I want one that is for my sourdough bread and then another one that would be for my cinnamon snowflake or heart or the cinnamon twists, just so that I have plenty going. I like to always have two. So this sourdough starter, it comes from a Shishi Poo Poo bakery that my son works at. So this sourdough starter was born in 1996, so it's 27 years old. And this is actually some of the starter that I have dehydrated so that I can send it in the mail to family and friends as well, just to preserve it, just in case of my sourdough starters die on me. So to start, we're gonna look at this one here first because this one has the hooch in it. And you can see the liquid in the bottom in there, nice and sour smelling. So I'm just gonna pour that off. Now, because these have been sitting for a long time, I'm going to start with a fresh jar. And with my full one, I am just going to take off this top layer and drop it into our bowl. Just because it's a little thicker and a little drier, so we're just going to drop that off into the bowl as well. I measure all the ingredients on a scale. We're going to start with our starter. What I want to do is I want to take quite a bit out of here because I am going to also be baking bread. There's no point in starting up the pizza oven if I'm going to only cook one thing. So I want to make sure that I have enough sourdough starter. So I'm going to do about 200 grams. And there we have it. We're going to tear it up. And basically when you are feeding your sourdough starter, you put equal amounts of all three ingredients. So 200 grams of sourdough starter. And then I'm going to also add in 200 grams of warm water and then 200 grams of bread flour. So this is a high protein flour, so we want it to be more enriched. We've got a full one here, and then we're just going to stir it up. If you have been intimidated by sourdough starter and the ins and outs, I do have a video that's called Sourdough Starter Simplified, which I explain all the ins and outs of why to feed it, why to discard, which one of the things for me is that I don't tend to do the discard because I bake bread, I'll only bake bread about once a week. When I'm baking it once a week, basically what I remove from it is the discard. And that's just kind of what's worked out great for me. But if you are baking it regularly and you do need to take out that discard, you can make things like sourdough crackers or sourdough crumpets or just sourdough fried bread. So we've got it all stirred up. And then what I do is with my spatula is I come and I scrape down the sides so that we can see a clear line of just how much is in there. And then we're going to loosely put on the lid and put the elastic to where our line is so that we can actually see when we have growth. Now, I probably have way too much in here and I'm probably gonna split it between another jar. Yes, my oven is also needing to be cleaned. And now that we're getting into the fall and I will be doing more baking, it will get cleaned. We're just gonna place them inside here, closer to where the light is. And now we're just gonna let them do their thing. We are at the next day and our sourdough has grown. This one in particular, I've already removed some of it for making our sourdough bread. And this one hasn't doubled up, but being that it's mature, but not at the state where it's used to being fed. So it's still usable, but as I continue my routine of making sourdough, it will just expand and be fantastic. But the smell is so beautiful, nice and sour, it's great. I'm going to be making 2 recipes for this collaboration. And the recipe that I'm going to be presenting to you is the Sourdough Snowflake Cinnamon Bread. In the background, while all this is going on, I'm also going to be making 6 loaves of sourdough bread. So you'll see me up there in the corner. I'll pop in periodically. Sourdough Cinnamon Snowflake Bread. I thought that this would be a really great recipe to do because we are getting into the winter season. And this cinnamon bread is just wonderful. It's so delicious and it comes out looking beautiful like a big giant snowflake. It is a great crowd pleaser. So it'll be something that you'll want to add, you know, maybe for Thanksgiving or for Christmas breakfast, which is what we did last year. One of the things I really love about this recipe is that it doesn't require a lot of work because I'm gonna let the stand mixer do it. When I'm making sourdough bread, it is hands-on, hands-in the whole time. This recipe will take 2 days, as does my sourdough bread recipe. So to start, we're gonna take 136 grams of scalded milk that's cooled to room temperature, and to that we're gonna add 2 room temperature eggs. And these, of course, came from my ladies. 25 grams of granulated sugar and 7 grams of salt. This recipe calls for dark rum, but all I have is brandy, so we're gonna put a teaspoon of brandy in there, maybe a little bit more, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom. I like to put in a little bit more just because I like the flavor of cardamom and things. Makes it very delicious. And last but not least, we're gonna add in 175 grams of our mature sourdough starter. Basically this whole jar. Perfect. Still a little bit left. So now what I will be doing is I will be going and feeding this. And then we're gonna mix all of this up with our dough hook, with our stand mixer, just to do the first initial mix. I don't know all of you who have chickens, but my chicken's yolks are good and strong, and so I'm actually breaking them up with my spatula because they're not breaking up in here. So I'm going to be adding the flour in increments. We're just mixing it until there is no more dry bits, and we want it to be kind of a stickier. It's not sticky, add a little bit more milk. So we have a nice sticky dough, and we're just going to take off our bit of dough here, and then we're gonna cover it and let it sit. I find that with most sourdough recipes, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. You're basically setting it, and then it's going to go and sit. So this is gonna sit for 30 minutes covered. So I love using the Glad Press and Seal. No, they are not a sponsor, but when I'm going to be doing something that's going to be needing a lot of opening and closings, I like this one because it does seal to the edge of your bowl, and you can use it multiple times and it's not awkward to get it on and off. So we will let this sit for 30 minutes in a warm place. So we just finished another 10 minutes of letting it beat, and we want to have the dough kind of, again, sticky like this. Now we're gonna add in 81 grams of unsalted butter in increments of about a tablespoon each. We are finished mixing our dough, and now we're going to take it off, and we're going to transfer it to a buttered bowl. kind of, you know, ask you to coil it up a little bit, but almost like a stretch and fold, like when you're doing sourdough bread. So just folding it onto itself. So I've removed all the dough from our mixing bowl. I prefer to just use this one. So I'm just going to quickly butter it up and transfer our dough back into it. And then I'm going to just kind of do a stretch and fold onto it. I'm stretching it up and folding it over onto itself, making sure that we're allowing the outsides of the dough to get some of the butter on it. And then we're going to cover it with our press and seal and let it go sit for an hour. And after that, I'm also going to do another stretch and fold and then let it sit for another hour and a half as it does this bulk fermentation. Hour is up. And so again, we're just going to kind of do some folding over on itself. And then back in for another hour. So we have our 6 sourdough loaves in the larder, along with our sourdough cinnamon bread. We're just going to cover these and leave them in this room overnight to bake up in the morning. Say goodnight to our bread. Good night, bread. Well, good morning. It is bread baking day. So let's go check it out. Let's just have a look at the bread. Oh, look at how gorgeous that looks. But what we're here for is this. So that has gotten nice and big, and that's what we're gonna take out. So our dough looks absolutely wonderful. We've got our pizza stone with some parchment on it. We've got 55 grams of unsalted butter, all melted, and then 80 grams of brown sugar with 1.5 tablespoons of cinnamon in it. Let's put our sourdough cinnamon snowflake together. We're just gonna dust the surface here and then turn our bread out. And even though it's called a bread, it doesn't have a real bready feeling to it. So we're just gonna pinch it together. And we're going to cut our dough into 4 pieces. Just going to remove some of this excess flour. And then we're going to pinch the ends all together and make a nice tight little ball. Now, I buy these specifically for this recipe, but you can use just regular parchment paper. I'm just going to give it a dusting on the parchment just to flatten it out, and then we're going to roll it out. Into basically a 12-inch circle. And then I'm going to place it on our stone. So that's our guide. And then we're going to do it with the other 4 balls. I prefer just to get them all done all at once so that when I'm assembling the snowflake, they're all ready to go. And now we are ready for assembly. We're going to take some of our melted butter and brush it onto this first layer. Not going quite to the edges, but enough. And we're going to take about 1/3 of our brown sugar cinnamon mix and sprinkle that on. And we're going to take our next layer of dough and sort of line it up as best as we can. And this is where I'm going to be doing some of my own stretching just to form it with the one underneath. I do have some holes in there. I'm not too concerned. Just gonna kind of gently stretch it to the edge. Try to see if I can repair that hole. Then we're gonna brush some more butter along with a nice heavy sprinkling of our brown sugar mix. Then we take our next layer across, lining up the edges. Take our last bit of butter, brush it on. And the last bit of our brown sugar cinnamon mix. Spreading it all around. And then we take our top layer. Again, stretching it to the edges. You don't need to worry about it looking, you know, all perfect, because it's going to be absolutely gorgeous when it comes out. So I am just going to do a little bit of a fold over so that it doesn't keep shrinking in. Ta-da! Now to make the snowflake, so then you need a circle for the center. You could use a mason jar seal. I want something a little bit smaller than this one, and we're gonna place that in the center as our guide. And then we begin the cutting. So first off, going from the center, we're just gonna cut quarters. Then we're going to cut the quarters in half again, and then we're going to cut each of these down one more time. Now, to make the snowflake arms, we're going to take 2 pieces together and we're going to twist them away from each other 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to pinch together the end and tuck it underneath so that it stays together, just like that. Again, taking the two pieces, twisting them 1, 2, 3, pinching together and tucking under so that we get a little bit of a point. 1, 2, 3, pinching together so that we get a point. Just so they can see. And then we're just going to continue going around our circle. I've also made it into the shape of a heart. You know, it's great for Valentine's Day. So with the heart, I would offset your circle just a little bit down, and then I do the same thing, but I just form it into a heart shape. The other thing is you can even put savory items in here. So if you wanted to put a little bit of basil and cheese, maybe a little bit of sun-dried tomato, so you could make it a savory one, more of a lunch type of thing. But don't go heavy on the spices or the flavorings, because as you can see, everything is opened up. Pinching. And there we have our beautiful snowflake. So now we're going to cover it and place it in a warm area for 2 hours to proof. Now while that's proofing, I need to go and fire up my pizza oven so that I can cook the bread. Our 2-hour proofing is done, and now we're gonna bake it at 430 degrees. Look at this gorgeousness. Isn't it beautiful? And now it's time to go get the last 2 loaves of bread out too, so I'll be right back. And this bread actually has an ear on it. Yay! I struggle with making ears. I'm just gonna let our snowflake cool, and I made a cream cheese frosting for it. You can do an egg wash onto it and then sprinkle just some icing sugar if you want, but Mama loves cream cheese. I did not cook the snowflake in the pizza oven because it gets so hot and it would have just incinerated the parchment paper, and you kind of need the parchment paper to move it around. As I said, I've also made it in the shape of a heart, but also I've just made them into cinnamon twists. So instead of making it round, I made it rectangular, cut them into strips, twisted them, and just have them as twists so that they're individual. This is dessert for about 16 people. And so you would just take off one of the arms of the snowflake, and then there is the center. I made this for breakfast for our last Christmas, and it was absolutely wonderful. So we are at the final step of our sourdough snowflake bread. It looks great, it's cooled. And then we've got our cream cheese icing, 4 ounces of cream cheese softened, and then a half a cup of icing sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla. I only put 2 tablespoons of milk in it. We're just gonna drizzle this all over. You can never have too much cream cheese icing. So there is our beautiful creation. And this will be absolutely wonderful for a special occasion or anytime actually. So it's an everyday, anytime. But you just look like, wow, did I ever prepare something fabulous. 6 loaves of sourdough bread along with our sourdough cinnamon snowflake. Anyway, I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care. God bless. It's baking season.